Hi everyone, this is Tom with the LEC recap of the 8th and final regular split week of the LEC Summer Split 2021. So there are many games to go over because there were 3 games once again, as with every Super Week. 3 game days I should say. So I'm going to keep each recap of each game a bit shorter so that it doesn't get too long and doesn't become like a 2-hour monologue, which, wouldn't be out of the question for me. And in general, I'm going to share some interesting highlights from the clips and let's do some thoughts on teams as well, just to keep it consistent. And we kicked off the weekend with Schalke 04 versus Vitality. And for Schalke 04, nothing was on the line anymore. They had already been eliminated from playoffs contention. For Vitality, a lot was on the line, obviously, because their wins would give them a chance to stay in the race for that final playoff spot. Now, Vitality kicked off with a flying start. They had 4 kills in 11 minutes, with Selfmade on the Rumble picking up 3 of them. It was really the Selfmade show, I think. You just could not see anyone but him getting the kills in this game. He was the man of the hour, and he carried Vitality on his back. So start off with a great clip of him picking up quite a few kills in a pretty impressive fight.
Playing against Astralis, team just above them in the standings and who they're competing with, there's still a lot at stake. Shigenda gets the backup of Selfmade. There's the Proto Belt forward. The Flame Spitter is burning. Well, that's going on in the bottom lane. Crown Shot and Lebrov pushing every time there's a play top. There's a counter bottom. Shigenda survives long enough to at least get one back. Now Nuclean steps forward. No shockwave. Selfmade flashes out. He's got the moves to support it. It ends up being a 2 for 3 in favor.
6 minutes later, he was at a 7-1 score. Vitality had a 6k gold lead. They had 2 Drakes. 4 of Schalke's towers were broken down. And it was simply impossible for Schalke 04 to do something about it. So this was a very comfortable win for Vitality, who all played together like a team in this game, which is a great improvement from them to see. Obviously, it wasn't against one of the stronger opponents, but for them, still probably a big energy boost to have. Then we went to SK Gaming versus Astralis, and this is one of the direct matchups for a playoff spot as well at that time. So both of these teams still in the running for a playoff spot. Astralis with the best odds, SK with not great odds. And I think that this game was really defined by a draft where Astralis had Viego in the jungle, Thresh in the bot lane on the first rotation, and they still got Aphelios, which is a champion that is very good with Thresh on the second rotation. So I think SK Gaming really should have banned that or played better against it in their composition. But they went with a Morde, Kaiser in the top lane, Gwen jungle, and Kalista and Tahm Kench in the bot lane. And you could just really see that Astralis' composition went on to be better as the game progressed. SK started the game with a small gold lead, but eventually Astralis managed to turn everything around and just started playing better. Astralis got all the picks they needed to on SK Gaming and used this to their advantage very well. I think White Knight, Sanzara, and Magic Felix especially, so like the more of the top side of Astralis was really popping off, getting all the kills, and SK Gaming just couldn't do much about it. So I really think that draft was just the death of SK Gaming, basically, as I think this was the game where they got already eliminated from playoffs contention. So yeah, it was just impossible for them to play the game, and Astralis eliminated SK from there. Third game of the day was XL versus Rogue, and XL opened, with quite some good aggression, which really set the tone. They were in the face of Rogue. Rogue did try to find some proactive plays in order to counter it. We've always seen Rogue try to play around the map more, maybe lean more into taking objectives rather than kills in order to match the gold advantage that the enemy team is getting. But this time around, they were really hungry for kills. I think they stayed somewhat on par with XL, but I think the key thing from this game is that XL used the pressure they had really well. They forced Rogue to make suboptimal plays, which Rogue kept on doing, which is not something we've seen really often. I think that in the end, it's just, I don't know what happens with Rogue, but when the late game comes around, they just become a different team or something. They just understand that part of the game so extremely well. I think they understood the situation much better they were in than XL, and they played the fights better when those started happening more than the actual team fight instead of like the 1v1 picks or the roams and stuff like this. And a great example of this is the Baron fight that happened in this game.
their way to the top of the river. Infinity Edge was picked up by Patrick. He's level 16 as well.
Oh, Rogue is coming.
Sensed this one and sniffed it out. Advian's got Hex Flash and Ultimate. Baron's going low. 9,000, just about halfway. 8,000. Shrimpy's got the Magnet Storm. The Flash, that's a stun onto Advian. He throws out the Ultimate. He needs to interrupt. That's a two-man knockup. 2,000 hit points on the Baron. Advian's dead. Inside the pit. Pick up the Baron, but the follow-up fight is fantastic.
The fourth game of the day was Mad Lions versus G2. Now, this is always an exciting game because of the existing rivalry between these two teams, and I think that this game was also pretty interesting. The early to mid game was pretty even, where we could see both teams trading blows. Karzi picked up some kills, Regulus picked up some kills. Both teams really used the early to mid game to kind of trade some first punches and see what the opponent was at. I think that later on, while these skirmishes kept going, you could see that G2 slowly was getting more out of this. You know, if, I don't know, like Mad Lions would get 3 kills, G2 would get 4, and that's obviously a lead that only starts extending further. So Mad Lions had 6 kills, G2 has 8, and you could see this growing and growing and growing. And I think G2 really played well with the tools they had. I think that they understood very well not to be overly aggressive against Mad Lions, not to overcommit, and that is something they paced themselves really, really well. Now, I think that in this game, you could just see maybe... It's obviously hard to say that the coaching that Nelson has been doing, but from what we've heard from the players is really teaching them to strictly stick to good macro, strictly stick to certain plays. And I think that this is something that they did really well against Mad Lions because it felt like they were playing the game pretty strictly. Now, it is G2, so sometimes they are really gonna chase kills, and that is something they still did. But I think, generally speaking, in this game, you could see that G2 was playing a bit more controlled, maybe still somewhat instinctively, but instincts that tell them to maybe better control better than what they did, if that makes any sense. But yeah, so G2 kept extending their lead. They got eventually the Dragon Soul, and even though it was a Cloud Soul, which wasn't very impactful overall, obviously, on the game, they just play better. And I think that they had not the cleanest win against Mad Lions, but it was still a pretty convincing win. So that was good for them to see in that game. And then the final game on Friday was Misfits versus Fnatic. Obviously, two of the teams that everybody said would be contending for the LEC title, even though maybe teams like Rogue and G2 and Mad Lions were a bit favored heading into it. I think that still you could see that both of these teams had a lot of strengths. Now, for Fnatic, that came in the early game because Bwipo, in a pretty impressive jungle move, he completely ruined Razork's jungle. He stole a lot of the camps, and this lead only extended further when Fnatic managed to convert this into many kills on Niski's Akali. And Fnatic was in a super comfortable position. They had a very good lead. They had everything they needed in order to close out the game. They just needed to pace themselves, be calm, recognize what Misfits were trying to do in order to come back, and just be one step ahead of them if they were going to go for objectives, if they were going to try to set up a fight. But this is a weakness of Fnatic that we've seen repeatedly in this split, and this time it got really punished. Fnatic started to be overconfident. They started to dive way too much into Misfits. They started to commit way too much to kills that they could not simply close out. And Misfits, to their credit, which is something that Misfits has been doing well in this split themselves, they were able to understand, okay, you know, we're going to just lean back for a bit, let them run into us, and then we strike. And that is something that Misfits did super well in this game. They were able to completely nullify the lead that Fnatic had simply because Fnatic kept overextending. And I have a clip for you to share and to show exactly what I mean.
He was in the first 22 minutes of this game.
I will say it's a bit awkward right now because there are no TPs and these side waves kind of need to be cleared out.
He's in a good spot. Kobe's going to jump. Niski still looking for this. Cleaver hits onto Razork. Has the Crescent Guard. Niski going forward. Razork look for the wind become lightning, but that Scuttle Crab was just out of range. Dives forward, smites it, heals up. Vanda on the front line now as Niski dives in with a black shield. Hit coming in from the side as well, and Niski's down. Fnatic over Chase. We said they were more measured, but they went too far. Adam goes in onto the back line, knocked up with a Hexagon and made him knock back. Bwipo still very tanky, but you can just ignore the Mundo. Don't take his calls. Leading on red, because Vitio cleans up Adam and Kobe is still healthy. Bwipo now trying to do what he can to keep Misfits at bay, but their appointments are all...
So yeah, it really sucks for Fnatic fans, I guess, but their team just completely threw again, and continued on what was quite a downward spiral after an 0-2 result in the previous week. They now went on a 3-game loss streak with a complete throw against Misfits. There's no other way of saying it. Then we went to day 2 and Misfits was up yet again. They played against SK Gaming this time around. SK went with a very tanky composition with Mundo, Leona and Gragas, and Misfits simply answered with a Trundle in the jungle. Trundle, the tank-killing jungle champion. Early on it was a very skirmishy game. SK did get the better of Misfits a little bit. They got the first 2 Drakes and they stole a Herald, but Misfits' composition scaled so well. Key to this, as I mentioned, was a Trundle who, when he had a few items, had a few levels, started really chunking out all the resistances that the SK tanks had. And you could really see that Razork would just set it up, and then Veteo and Kobe would swing in to pick up the kills. It was very well organized from Misfits in that regard. I think Misfits just completely took over once their champions got a bit online. They just knew exactly when to strike against the composition of SK. Misfits, even though SK had the first 2 Drakes, Misfits got the next 4 ones. They got the Cloud Soul. They snuck a Baron underneath the nose of SK Gaming and used all of this to just continue snowball that advantage that their composition was creating even further. And SK simply couldn't fight because every time they would already get chunked out by Misfits before the game would even start. And Misfits just pushed forward and ended that game. Now, the next game was very important because it was Astralis versus Excel, another one of these playoff spots. And I think with a win, Astralis would secure themselves the playoff spot, the 6th and final spot. It got very intense here, obviously, because for Excel, it was in their interest to win in order to stay in the race. Now, Excel started off strong and sat in the driver's seat in this game. And they engaged very well on Astralis and pulled ahead early in the game. Now, Astralis, I think, in this game was very clunky with their engages. You had a moment where they were in the topside jungle of Excel and they tried to start a fight, but they were standing still and knew that one of the Excel players was in the bush, but they just stood there. And then when they went in, it was already way too late and the Excel player could just walk away. But for some reason, Astralis committed an ultimate to this. So it was just really weird and really frustrating to see Astralis. Maybe it was the nerves that got to them in this game, but yeah, they really did not play so well in this game. And even though they still pushed back here and there, you could see that at no point I think Excel was really sweating in this game. Now, Astralis did find one moment where they could actually push out into the lanes of Excel, and then they tried to get the Baron. And then this happened.
Felix is inside the Dragon Pits.
They're splitting up here, so right now the play is still favoring XL. Magic Felix does have that TP though if they want to contest it, but it looks like they're looking for a steal for Sansaro.
All of a sudden, Nuktak's going to face off against the mid lane. Gets the gold card down, wild cards come out, the shockwave forces out the hourglass. Okay, Dragon secured that soul denied. Defensive flash from Magic Felix, and now the engage goes in. Sansaro gets stolen! Sansaro gets the Baron, and now Marcoon is being chunked up by Jeskla. Imagine if he had more damage, but he doesn't.
However, Astralis' base was just wide open and they had no good strategy how to engage on Excel. You could see that they didn't really know how to do. It wasn't great communication from them. Every time they would try to set up something, Excel would get too much time to respond to this. White Knight had a flank in the top lane where he teleported and Excel kind of had to walk back, and then a fight broke out, but it didn't really do much damage to Excel. And to close out the game, there was another fight where Excel was kind of being pushed into the bot river by Astralis, and White Knight had another TP. He TP'd into the jungle, snuck up behind them, but then got overly aggressive on the Renekton and dove in way too fast without his team being able to follow up because they were being kited by Excel. And Excel just turned around on him, killed him, and then all of a sudden had a 5v4 heading into the fight. So I think that was really, it was really the tone of the game for me, where you could see that Astralis was being indecisive and not communicating well, and Excel won the game based off that failed flank from White Knight. We continued with Rogue versus Vitality, and Rogue thought, okay, let's spice things up. They played a Syndra in the bot lane for Ansama and a Blitzcrank for Trimby. Now, Vitality did have a slightly better start to the game than Rogue did. They pulled ahead in goals after Inspired failed a gank in the top lane. Think though that Odo Omni really had some other thoughts on this, because he got a quadra kill as Cannon in a top lane fight and was really the powerhouse for Rogue this game. So the game became pretty even from there. Rogue did have the items, they eventually had the levels to continue pushing, all by playing around the map as we've always seen them do. But then they became something that we haven't seen Rogue become very often. They became a bit too cocky. They started diving things they probably shouldn't dive. They started chasing for kills they probably shouldn't be chasing for. And Vitality managed to turn this around. Now, this is pretty impressive from Vitality, because generally speaking, I think that this has been a team that as their early game needs to be pretty good in order to snowball. But this time they played very controlled, very resilient as well, and they recognized the opportunity to strike back when Rogue overextended. And they did really do that very well. Vitality played calm, they played collected, and they actually managed to defeat Rogue simply because Rogue was being overzealous, they overcommitted, and Vitality struck back at them. Now, then we went to G2 versus Schalke 04, and as always, this is a very, very intense game, and no matter what position either team is in, this is going to be a close game. And you could see this as well, again, in this game, that for some reason it just gives Schalke 04 a boost. Maybe it gives G2 a negative buff or something like this, a debuff when playing against Schalke 04. It was just a nail-biter game. I'm not going to go too much into it because I don't think the result mattered too much for the end in the end. But Schalke started off with a pretty good fight in pretty good pressure on the top side. They actually were trying to get Broken Blade as much ahead as possible, which makes sense because he's the best performing player on the team since day one of this split. And from there on, the skirmishes started happening. Now, I think that G2 was really hell-bent on not losing again to Schalke 04. For them, it mattered a bit for the seeding heading into the Summer Split playoffs, their standings. But G2 eventually overcame the pressure that Schalke was delivering, played cleaner, and won that game. The final game of that day was Mad Lions versus Fnatic. Match of the week as well, and it was a very even game from the get-go. And as expected from two teams that love skirmishing, from early on there were plays all over the map with teams trying to pick each other off. Very enjoyable game from that regard. On Fnatic side, you had Niski and Absent who got the farm, where on Mad Lions side it was more the top side. It was Armwood and Elyoya who were farming the gold and the kills, and it became a pretty bloody game. Now, I think that in the end, it was really Mad Lions. You could see them playing better than Fnatic. You could see that they understood very well how to deal with Fnatic's pressure, and we saw maybe a bit of the Mad Lions that we saw against Rogue as well, where they played a bit more controlled and understood, okay, this is their time to deliver pressure, but if we choose our moments correctly, we will be able to easily win this game. And I think that in the end, they kind of did. You could see that, for me at least, I think Humanoid played super well, Akarsi played super well. And in general, I think this was a glimpses of a Mad Lions that I could see contest with the very top for the LEC title at the end of the split. So props to Mad Lions for a pretty good game. And Fnatic continued the loss streak and was now at 4 games loss streak. And then we headed into day 3. Now, in this third day, there were still 3 teams that had the possibility of making it as 6th slot in the LEC playoffs. Astralis needed to win their game and needed to Excel to lose their game versus G2. Vitality needed to win the game versus Astralis and needed Excel to lose versus G2. Excel needed Astralis to lose against Vitality and needed to win their game versus G2. And if both Astralis and Excel would win their game, there would be a tiebreaker game. So heading into this, it's already set up to be a very tense game. But we kicked off with a game that didn't matter as much. It was Rogue versus SK Gaming. Rogue struck very quickly with 2 kills, getting on Jezu, who was really not having a good start to the game. And then just started playing around the map. Repeated formula to get an even bigger gold lead. Before 10 minutes, they already had a 3.5k gold lead. They got the first Drakes, they got the first Herald. 20 minutes into the game, they had a 9k gold lead, and there was just nothing that SK could do. Rogue barreled over SK Gaming. Then we went to the interesting match that was Vitality versus Astralis, a game for staying in the playoffs race. Loser would be out. It was an absurdly good start from Vitality. You could really see that they played like they had nothing to lose. Zanzara died early, and the rest of Vitality just went berserk with the taste of blood that they had from this. Crownshot and Leader farmed early kills before 10 minutes. Vitality already had an 8-1 kill score, and shortly after had a 5k gold lead. So that's really, really big. And even though Astralis generally, likes to play, doesn't like to play from behind, but even if they're behind, they still manage to pull out a win. This was just too much to overcome for them. Vitality, even though Astralis had one good fight around 14 minutes, they still were traded 3 for 4. They didn't get much out of this. And Vitality, in the meanwhile, got the Drakes. They got the Herald. The game slowed down a bit then for, 7-8 minutes. And then Vitality said, you know what, enough is enough. The teams are in need of a fight.
Significant advantage. One thing I'll call out, though, is that despite those individual errors around the Dragon and the mid lane that allowed Vitality the lead, Stars have slowed down for now. White Knight waiting on the maximum dosage. That's a flash engage from LeBron. The Croton starts to channel. Rocket Bell was used. That's the first kill already picked up. Chigenda's down even through Dominus. Selfmade's going to be the next target. Heartbreak has already been used. He can't find a soul to sell. It's Promiscuous that gets taken down. Crownshot gets excited. Gets excited again. Looking for Magic Felixes now. All of a sudden that's a flea. And Fia just left for the triple. Crowny.
Shortly after this fight, the team clashed again for the Dragon Soul, which Vitality tried to secure, and while Australia did manage to sneak that Drake away from them, they got all killed immediately after. So Vitality just held on to their lead and eliminated Australis from playoffs contention with a win, and they were hoping that G2 would defeat XL later on. As a small intermezzo, there was Shogunovir versus Fnatic, and Shogunovir actually did get first blood on Kirei and perhaps had this window to skill. Now, that was kind of the trigger for Fnatic to start pushing back, which they kept doing. And overall, you could see, okay, even if Fnatic hadn't been clean in the games prior, they were still overall on an overall power level just better than Shogunovir. Upset, Niski, Whippo, they were pushing on the pain points of Shogunovir in this game. Shogun's only hope was really Broken Blade, again, who played super well on the Jace, was dealing all the damage that Shogunovir needed him to deal, but it was just impossible for them. Even though Broken Blade played phenomenally on the Jace, Fnatic played better. They were just the better team, better individual play, better team play, and Fnatic won that game, ended their loss streak, and ended, most importantly, the Summer Split on a positive note. Now, then we go to Misfits versus Mad Lions as the fourth game of the day. It was fun at the start, when both teams started to have a little dance-off in the mid lane, 5v5, but it was tragically ruined by Vander, the denier of fun, and then just, the game the game just continued as usual from there on. It was a very skirmishy game. Both teams thought, okay, you know what, we're gonna try to fight quite a lot, which was very interesting because Mad Lions had a composition that maybe tried to play around a bit more. They had Karji on the Draven, which is something I'm not sure if we've actually ever seen it in this in this split or in this year even. But he performed very well on it. They had Elyoya on the Zac in the jungle as well. So they had a very experimental composition, and they were willing to commit to it. It was more of a scrim game than a regular game as we normally see. I think that Mad Lions, even though they won the first 2 brawls and Misfits took the one brawl after, and then I think they won 2 brawls, but it didn't really matter much because Mad Lions is a team fight team. They're very good at team fighting. They started accelerating, and it just became mayhem. And one such good engage and once team fight is shown when Elyoya decided to go for a pretty bold play.
To ramp it up, and they definitely have.
And that's the big thing from the Mad Lions' perspective. Right? Whoa. That thought again. That's going to be the Q, trying to find the auto attack connection. He is! It's just a combo! There's nothing to do, but Misfits, can they fire back? Razork has to run for the hills. If they can find a kill,
he's going to go again!
To reset, but Elyoya, he's got a red buff to Q2, but no. Razork unstoppable on that one, will be able to walk away with the power of the ultimate. He's going back in anyway, he does big damage to those tanky targets. Is it going to be enough though? Elyoya gets hooked out of midair! Vander finds that one, the passive comes in. Arma does not have the TP to try and save him, but he is going to go in with the ultimate anyway, trying to find his way into the backline. Kave now locked up, Vander now taken down, Arma doing so much damage, and Karzi untouched, free hitting Razork, but VTO, they're still living. Arma manages to find one more, VTO running for his life, with the ignite, the final axe to shut it down. Here it goes back in! What is had the picks are...
And Mad Lion just built a big lead. Karzi was dealing insane amount of damage on the Draven. I think he would two-shot most of the squishier champions on Misfits. He just dealt insane damage. Had 6 items. I think like maybe at 20 minutes or something, he was already had 6 items or was close to 6 items. He was farming for days. Misfits just kept putting back, pushed back more and more. It was an unovercomable lead for Misfits, even though Mad Lion started falling maybe a bit later in the game. Yeah, there was nothing really that Misfits could do about Mad Lion's damage output. So very entertaining game. If you want to watch a scrim game, wouldn't take it too seriously, but there's a lot of action. So if that's something you enjoy, definitely watch this one. And then for the final game of the Summer Split with G2 versus XL, the regular Summer Split, of course. And don't worry about self playoffs, but the regular Summer Split, we had XL versus G2. And XL had some bold strategies in order to try to secure their playoff spot. Remember, a win would get them into the playoffs. A loss would mean Vitality would be locked into the playoffs. They had a Lilia top, LeBlanc mid, and Draven bot. So yet another Draven in the league. I think we should maybe consider renaming the LEC to the League of Draven for a bit, because there's an increasing popularity of the champion. And I like it. It's a fun champion to watch, fun champion to see pop off, because he does so much damage. Very frustrating to play against. But anyway, G2 on their end ran it back with Lissandra mid for Caps, which isn't the champion that we see very often, but we know it's a champion that Caps like to play. And I think that early on, XL played very controlled. They capitalized on a small mistake that Caps made and really started to push into G2. And G2 was forced to sit back a bit and forced to see XL extend their lead slowly but surely. But XL, they really threw it all away by simply one decision they made, which was to push in all the way in the bot lane of G2, and they simply pushed too far.
In for Mickey, but Excel perfectly wait to dodge out on the cooldown. The 4 stack going to come in. Wonder's passive going to block it. G2 has to run for the hills. Yes, they got the objective, but Reckless waiting in the darkness. Patrick is still too big to be messed with. They don't have the CC. Can they turn? G2 getting run down. Excel continuing to force this fight. They want more. They want playoffs. They refuse to back away. But G2 still take the Drake in the end.
These fights are on a knife's edge. Caps had an extra millisecond. He could have ulted himself. That's a TP from Wonder. He's coming behind XL. Maybe XL have overstayed. Caps can TP in 2 seconds as well. Patrick trying to get Mickey. He has flash up, but he doesn't have a cleanse.
No,
it's a 4-man unit. Crisis coming back in as well. Caps is TPing.
Can they do it? Have they thrown it all the way? Patrick still no QSS, still no tools to protect him. Wonder running him down. Caps holding onto the ult, waiting for the Draven to get a little bit closer. Where is he going to use it? He's going for it. He's going to use it on himself. Patrick, no mana, but he's got axes. Maybe, just maybe, he cannot do it. They're going to go for the kill. They've shut them down. They've obliterated Excel. It's a massive throw. Excel saw it all right in front of them, and they threw it.
And this swung the game back into G2's favor massively, and they didn't let go of the opportunity. They completely seized it and pretty relentlessly just eliminated XL yet again from playoffs contention. And with that, let's take a look at the final standings of the LEC regular Summer Split. At the very top is Rogue in first place with a 13-5 score to round up the Summer Split. In shared second position is G2, Mad Lions and Misfits, each with a 12-6 score. Now G2 is second based on the individual results, Mad Lions third in the individual results, and Misfits fourth based on individual results. Then in fifth place we have Fnatic with 11-7 score. Sixth is Vitality with 8 wins and 10 losses. And in the lower part of the standings we have Astralis with 7 wins and 11 losses. XL finished 8th with 7 wins and 11 losses as well, but based on individual results, they are 8th. Then we have SK Gaming with 5 wins and 13 losses. And in final place is Schalke 04, who exit the LEC with 3 wins and 15 losses in the summer split. And this gave us the seeding for the playoff spot. Now remember that it was based on spring split finishes. Teams accumulated points there based on their standings in the very end. And in summer split, teams got points based on their regular split finish. And based on this, Rogue ended in first place, Mad Lions ended in second place, and G2 and Misfits ended in third and fourth. Fnatic is in 5th place with Misfits, and Rogue got to choose their opponent for the upper bracket match between Misfits and G2, and surprisingly they chose Misfits. So let's take a look at how the brackets are shaping up. In the upper bracket we have Rogue versus Misfits as the first match of the upper bracket. Then we have G2 versus Mad Lions, a rematch, and in the lower bracket we have Vitality versus Fnatic, and the loser of that game is immediately eliminated. And now let's round up with some thoughts on each team's performances, and let's work our way from bottom to top as usual. Schalke 04, 3 wins, 15 losses. Very sad for them obviously to end their time in the LEC like this, but I don't think I feel that much pity for an org that had probably a better jungler on the bench and decided not to play him, even though results were kind of spiraling downward. So in terms of the results, I don't pity them as much. I think there are a lot of people who I very much enjoyed working with as a professional on Schalke 04, and I really hope for them that they're going to be able to stick around in the LEC because they were very pleasant to work with from a purely competitive point of view. This split was a pretty big failure. I think they could have done better, but it is what it is. They exit like this, and I hope for many of the players on their team that they will be able to find a home, I think, and I tweeted this as well. I think Broken Blade is absolutely championship material, so I hope he gets picked up by a top team. SK Gaming, finishing 9th, woohoo. Their final iteration of the roster looked a bit better than what they had coming into the roster, and obviously having Jesse's to start in the first place was a big mistake, and I tweeted about this as well, but I really hope for the players that they don't get very much punished for this bad season, because ultimately it's management who makes the decision on the roster. This roster should never have happened. I think management really should have done more in order to get better rosters. Like, for example, just a support decision alone, Lilith turned out to be a pretty decent rookie, had some pretty nice performances. And you can't tell me that having Jesus at the start of the split was a good idea. I refuse to believe this. So I hope that it's not really the players that get face backlash from within the org for the split, because I think they have some very talented players. Treats is obviously very talented. Genox is a very good top laner in my opinion. So I think that overall it's really management's fault that SK Gaming split went to shit, and I think they should be the ones facing the biggest repercussions for what happened. Excel miss out on another playoffs, another team where I think that it's very difficult for me to see why the subs from Marcoon and Advian didn't happen earlier. I know that we have from the organization in like official statements and stuff like this that Marcoon and Advian wanted a bit more time to develop, but it's also weird because if you have a proper team structure, then why wouldn't an ERL player want to debut in the LEC from the start of the split, which is what should have happened. I think that overall this XL lineup could have been very promising, perhaps if they had been like this from the start and got more time to play together, because they had some good development going there. So yeah, I think that is something that is a shame for the players again, but also think that just upper management really needs to take a good look at how they make these decisions, because ultimately they fail yet again with a roster that very much would have been possible to qualify had they had a bit more growth to work with. Then we go to Astralis. Astralis barely miss out. I think this team experienced a lot of growth in the year, but didn't really manage to peak at some point. I think they steadily grew. Their early game is something that never got fixed in the end, which is a pretty big mystery to me. Like, how can you go an entire split without really improving your early game? They did become a bit more proactive maybe towards the end of the split, but overall it was just not very good. And obviously they had their playoff spot in their own hands. They were literally facing all 3 of their direct opponents, and they failed. They choked, maybe the nurse, I don't know about that, but I think overall, if I look at the Astralis, this is never a team that was going to win the title. I think they had a really good chance at making the playoffs. Shame for them that they fumbled, but I don't think they would have ended higher than 6th, even if they made it to the playoffs. So maybe on that regard, it wasn't a very big loss for them. Vitality achieved the bare minimum by making playoffs for this roster. On the final moment, they were able to make it with a team this talented and also roster moves. I think this was the bare minimum. Now, I think that this is a team, as we've said before, that really struggled to find team play and get that going. But it seemed that in the final week, maybe they did something better. So if they can carry on that trend, then perhaps they will be able to defeat Fnatic. But I really don't think so. I really think Vitality started to develop that team synergy too late into the split. And it's just really, it's not a team where I would just question, like, how can you have a whole organization behind 5 very talented players and not be able to bring them on the same page, because they all want to win. So maybe, I don't know, maybe the players' egos were too big. It is possible that in some regards they are not, you cannot work with them. But I think that the fact that development is happening now means that there was a possibility. So, Fnatic 11-7 is not a terrible record, but I think that this team was able to do much more. Going on a 4-game loss streak towards the end was really weird, but I think it was just a culmination of this team maybe getting a bit too confident and also finally being punished for mistakes they were making, because this is a team that skirmished a lot and they kept doing this, and now teams started to punish them. So maybe they learn a hard lesson from this, but I really think that Fnatic is in a very dire position. In order to make Worlds, they really need to win. I think they need to win 2, but best of 5s at least in order to make it. So it's gonna be pretty tough for them in order to get there. I think it's 3 actually. They need to win 3. Whew. Misfits then, I think that Misfits, for a team that didn't have as much of an identity as the other top contenders in their playstyle, really did well. I think Razork throughout the entire split, hear it maybe a bit more towards the beginning, and then Vander was also super solid. I think this team overall is just very talented and just a neutral good team. I don't really know what else to say about it. I think they're gonna have a tough time in best of 5s, because they will need to adapt much more, and that is something that they are going to be in for the first time, because in the spring, remember, they did not make playoffs, but them finishing 4th is very impressive, and I think they did a good job overall. Mad Lions in 3rd place. Given the start that Mad Lions had with their quarantine, I think this team can still be pretty happy with the results. I do think that this team needs to step it up more if they want to win the title, because especially individual play has not been very good, especially from Armut, who is just publicly acknowledged that he's not playing very well. But they really need to fix just in general individual play being consistently good, because their team play is pretty fine, I think. But if you're gonna have individual mistakes setting you behind or putting you behind if you have a lead, something like this, then top teams are going to be able to punish that. So I think that they really need to step that up going forward. G2 then, I think G2 is coming into shape. G2 is looking better every week, 3 a week. They're doing good. I think that this is shaping up to be a team that is going to contest for the titles very seriously. Rogue, consistency all across the board. I think they're playing super well. Best team in the league at the moment. I wonder how quickly G2 is going to be able to catch up, but it's just Rogue. They're just doing very well. And then to round up the LEC SuperFantasy standings at the end of the regular split, but remember that we can still play the playoffs as well. In first place is Faramir with 5,840 points. Second is Wittakast with 500 points behind him, so that's going to be difficult to close, but we'll see. Queen Dobrev in third place, Mavi in fourth place, Bene in fifth place, Stepan in sixth place, Alita is on fire in seventh place. I'm in eighth place at the moment with 4,902 points. Lucky Reed in ninth place and Tilt Schweiger in 10th place with 4,682 points. And that's it for my LEC recap for this week. I hope you enjoyed this a bit longer one. I will be releasing a bit of content on this channel, special project as well, articles as well. If you want to see those, follow me on Twitter on the handle below, and I'll see you more for more content.